Now we have the drawing. Everything is in place, everything is ready. Now we're going to do the painting, the actual painting of the panel. Let's have a quick look into our layer palette. This is now very typical to what I normally have in all the panel artworks of the Wormworld Saga online graphic novel. I have the 2 perspective layers. Sometimes they are 3, depending on the scene. I will turn them off now because I don't need them anymore. And I have 2 layers of drawing. The detailed layer on top of the rough layer, and I will just merge the 2 into one layer that I call the drawing. Yeah, I always try to keep these things tidy and throw away what you don't need. It's completely sufficient to have one layer with the whole drawing on it. And I still have the layout version inside this document. I will also turn it off, and I will also name it properly layout. Well, I started to call these things layout, but it was misleading, and in fact it's a prelim. So that's the drawing. Here's the prelim. I will just put it on top. And now I need a new layer for the colors. And now I can take the layer palette away because now all the interesting stuff happens on the canvas. Now, just like I did it on the preliminary version, I will take the biggest brush first in order to make the biggest color decisions in this at this stage. You will notice that because I had scaled up the whole canvas in the last step, my biggest brush now is a lot smaller than it used to be in the first part where I painted the grayscale prelim version. That is okay because now I have all the different shapes in here, and I kind of have to paint inside them and around them, and with a brush too big that wouldn't be not so easy. So what I'm trying to do, the way I start to paint a panel depends very much on what is shown in the panel. This here is an interior panel, and the first thing that I want to make sure in an interior panel, and in fact I'm going to scale up my brush a bit because now I will have to paint some big color areas, and that is the walls that are in this image. I still keep some reference images in the background outside of the recording area. This one here, for example, I just keep it as a reference for the colors that are in the scene, and this image here, of course, too, because this panel here is very close to the scene that I'm creating right now. It's it's the exact same light situation. The single light on this little sideboard here is illuminating the scene, and therefore the scene that I'm creating now will be very similar to that. So what essentially I am able to do is I could even pick different colors out of this panel, but I'm trying to go another route, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do this like an individual panel, just so that you are able to see my approach on a panel with no reference at all. So my first action would be to block in some areas that you notice that because of the size of the canvas and the fact that I'm recording this, my system gets a little bit slow, but I think that's okay, and that's presumably only the case when I'm using the very big brushes, so I think it won't hurt too much. So what I'm trying to do is to block in the most important color areas with a local color, just to tell them apart. And I'm taking these, in this case I'm now looking at my reference images, but if I hadn't any reference images, I would have to choose the colors on the run, so to say. Just at the moment of painting, I would choose a color, and I would experiment with that also. The colors that you see in this scene were invented in this panel here. That was the panel where I had to decide which is the color of the walls, the color of the carpet on the ground. Is there a carpet on the ground? I needed it to have the color there. And what is the color of the bed sheet and everything, and the little decke. I think it's also called a cover. I don't know. This little green color spot. These all were decisions that I made in this panel. So I will keep these colors that I, so to say, invented there. But if this panel was would be the first time that I paint the scene, I really had to decide which color I take. And well, talking about color decisions is a whole video of itself, I would say. I will now have to choose a smaller brush in order to be able to put in the smaller shapes. And my process on this is very, yeah, you could say it is very intuitive, because there are several ways to paint, and normally I'm a friend of painting very structured and very controlled. I would, for example, normally, and by normally I mean if I was working on an artwork for the job or for some client, normally I would I would separate everything in different layers and make sure to be flexible and to be able to change everything at any time, at any given time. And in fact, the first panels that I created for the Wormworld Saga were created exactly in that way. I tried to be very controlled and very flexible and very professional about it. And these first panels I created for the Wormworld Saga, I threw them away because it just didn't work for me. I wasn't able to create the scenes that I somehow saw inside my head through a controlled and analytical process. What I needed to develop for the Wormworld Saga for myself was a process in which I would just go ahead with my first idea, and the first thing that comes to my mind, and then later adjust everything according to what's on the canvas. That for me is a very important difference to the way I'm normally working. Normally I'm working in an analytical way, and I say, well, this and this is true, so we have to paint that and that in this way. And for the Wormworld Saga, I try to follow my gut feeling for every step, and I accept that the first thing I'm trying is not always the right thing, and I will have to adjust that, and that I will have to take steps back. And but I found out for me that this truly is the best way to do it. And you can see that I'm very unstructured here. While I'm speaking, I'm painting, and I'm not really thinking about what to paint. I'm jumping all over the place, and everywhere where I see a shape not yet defined, I try to invent it. I try to fill it with color, and I'm not really making sure that the decision I'm taking makes sense in a way that it's the perfect choice and it's ready. What I'm trying to do, or if I'm able to make me understandable here, what I'm trying to do is to make a first step, a best guess step, and then look where it brought me to, and then decide what I have to change in order to arrive where I want to arrive in the end. So what you will see now here is that I have a lot of local color everywhere. I have filled the shapes with the local colors, and now I have literally no lighting in the scene. It's all plain colors. It's all self-illumination, and that's not good. But what I have here now is I have a base to decide in which direction I have to go at any given place to reach the destination that I'm looking for. And the destination that I'm looking for I have defined in the grayscale prelim version. Here I have defined things like the room is going to complete black at the other side of the panel, and the lamp is the brightest spot in the whole composition, and the side of the bed receives more light than the top of the bed, and things like that. And what I'm trying to do now is to incorporate these things into the image by manipulating it, rather than painting every part exactly the way it will look at the end. I I establish a first version that is then that I then can edit and manipulate in a way that it will become the final result. And the first way to do that, the first way to establish the mood and the lighting of the whole scene for me is to take a very big brush and a very big and soft brush, and taking a middle blue color and choosing the multiply mode and darkening the whole panel according to the value plan that I had created with the grayscale preliminary version, and that is to darken everything towards the top right corner, so that it becomes very dark, and the topmost top right corner will be so dark that you can't see anything in it. And this is a very good method for interior scenes, because what you really get in an interior scene is large gradients over planes like the walls, the bed sheet here, the bed corpus, and the cupboard. And you can do this quite nicely with a very big brush. And what I found out is that you don't even have to mask off everything. It doesn't really make sense to mask the bed and to mask the wall behind it and to paint it individually. But you just, well, you know, light is a global phenomenon, and its effect on these two planes, the wall and this head plate of the bed, it's the same effect, and because they are both are facing into the same direction, so I really don't have to do a lot of masking here right now. That is not true for the bed, because we have a quite prominent change of direction in the bed, which is depicted by this line here in the drawing, which essentially says everything in this area faces in this direction, and everything above this line faces up to the ceiling, so it receives a lot less light from the light source here. So what I'm doing now is I'm using a quite sharp and small brush. Again, change into multiply mode and painting a dark shade over this whole plane here. And again, what I did not try to reach the exact final value of this plane. You could say that what I'm doing here is working in layers, like you would do with watercolor, layering one. It's called washes, I think. I'm working in washes, in which I'm layering dark. One transparent layer of color over the next, and that way I'm working towards the goal. And I can use this brush also to create other dark areas. For example, beneath the bed it will be very dark. There's no light getting there, and under the capper too. and essentially these parts here, all these parts, won't get a lot of light, so I make it dark. And I'm not trying to, again, I'm not trying to be too meticulous here. I'm just trying to paint stuff dark that will be dark. And if it was too sloppy and if it doesn't work, I can go into it and change it later. Now, well, like I see it, the biggest color and value decisions are made, and now I will make a quick test, and that for me is the most important test while I'm working on the painting. I will turn off the drawing, and that tells me if the scene already works. And the scene quite works in some aspects, but a lot of stuff does not already work, and doesn't work yet, I wanted to say. And well, that's okay, because I'm just working for 20 minutes or something like that, and normally I'm painting 2 hours on a panel like that, so we have plenty time to refine all this, and there's a lot of work still left to do. I will turn on the drawing again, but what I will do is I will dial it down a bit to 50% transparency, so that I still see the drawing now, but I'm dialing it down to a level where the color can work on itself. It's very important that in the end you won't need any lines anymore, because the Wormworld Saga is in the Wormworld Saga I'm trying to achieve a painted look, and in a painting you shouldn't need lines to make the image work. You should use light to do that. Now, what I'm doing next is the next little trick. I will again take my very big soft brush and will take a warm color, and I will change the mode to overlay, and oh, I'm on the wrong layer. That happens often. I'm still on the drawing layer. I have to go on the color layer now. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm tinting the whole scene. All areas here around the lamp are tinted in a warm tint, and if I'm using a lighter color, more yellowish, then I will be able to lighten everything up a bit too. So what I've done now is that I have changed the mood of the whole light situation quite a bit now, and I'm now ready, since I have the feeling that I have established the main mood of the panel. I'm now able to go into the details a bit more. So I'm zooming in a bit and trying to be a bit to use a bit of logic in order to flesh the thing out here. For example, the scene right at the moment, the whole scene lacks drop shadows. We have a single light source, and by the way, I just want to make clear for myself that this is a very bright light source, so I'm painting it with white here. We have a very bright light source in it, and it's a single light source, and a single light source always creates a lot of shadows. So what I'm trying to do now is find areas where these shadows will occur, and the most obvious part would be here besides the bed, and it's already kind of depicted by chance. And here we have now a cast shadow from the cupboard. Is this even a cupboard? I don't know if you call it cupboard. In Germany it's called Beistelltisch. Oh no, it's not called Beistelltisch. No, that's crazy. I don't even remember the German word for it. I will find the right word, and then I will tell you what it's in German. Right now my mind is programmed to paint and not to find words of stuff. Nachttischchen. Yeah, I think that's it. Nachttischchen. Standing. Nacht is night and Tischchen is table. Small table. Tischchen. Nachttischchen. It's a small table that's beside the bed. Now the body of the lamp here will have several values because it's rounded and the light doesn't shine to all parts, so it will be darker here, and the lamp itself will create a fairly harsh shadow onto this Nachttischchen. And that's always good to show the form. Shadows are the best way to reveal form. The shadows will be the most important element in order to get rid of the drawing. So if I turn off the drawing now, you will see that this lamp starts to work without the drawing, because it has form, it has volume through the shading and through the cast shadows here. So essentially what I'm trying to do now in this whole process is to create shading and shadows that are able to reveal the form to the viewer, so that we don't need any lines any longer to do that. This here is, by the way, is a very difficult subject. It's the T-shirt that Jonas has put over the lamp, and that's not easy because what I'm trying to paint here is fabric that's translucent. And what I'm now doing is I'm looking at the way I painted it in the other panel from chapter 1. And but what I remember is that when I had to paint that for chapter 1, I really took I took a real T-shirt and put it over my own lamp, my own bed lamp. Don't know if it's called a bed lamp. In German it's called a Nachttischlampe. Oh, that's the word, Nachttisch. Again, the Nachttischlampe sits on the Nachttisch. So I put a real T-shirt over my Nachttischlampe and try to find out how it works. It's really not easy to depict, and I'm not too happy with the result in the first chapter, and I think I will have to go. I will have to make a compromise here too, because it's just without taking real photo reference, it's really hard to create these effects, especially if they are very complicated. Light that shines through translucent textile is really not easy to show. Light tends to get very reddish when it's traveling through materials like paper or textiles. So that's the way I'm going here, and the thicker the fabric is, the less light will travel through it, and the darker and redder the light will get. And well, that's essentially what I'm trying to do here. But I again, I won't I won't try to do it right just with a single stroke. What I've tried to do is to narrow it down to the right result. I'm just trying to implement some more drop shadows now, because that's really easy for me. I enjoyed to trace shadows or to paint shadows in places where they are obviously to go. For example, behind this edge here, or the back of this, the parts of this little ball here that sits on the bedpost. The parts that are not facing to the light source will be dark too. And the same is true for this edge here. And this little ornament here in the bed will also receive some shadows, but it will also receive some light. And what I'm doing now here is that I'm picking, with a color picker, I'm picking lighter tones from here and put it into the darker parts, just to show that here's some volume, here are some elements that are facing in a way to the light source that makes them brighter. And that's the way to show volume. What I love to do the most are the really dark shadows, black shadows, areas where no light will come to, and that, for example, will be directly beneath Jonas's arm here. That will cast a very dark shadow. And inside Jonas's sleeve, you will also have a dark shadow. And these dark shadows are really good, because they work a bit like the lines in the drawing, but they are truly created by the light. And normally they are really easy to place, because you can quite accurately say where these very dark shadows will go to. And I'm zooming out a bit now. And normally, when you have put some of these dark shadows into the painting, you can turn off the drawing and see that it starts to work even better than before. Now, a place where we also will have to, a place where we want to have a dark shadow is beneath the thought, because it lies on top of the sheet and it casts the dark shadow onto the sheet, and that makes it more visible too. Now, the counterpart to the shadows normally is the very bright parts, and I have a nice little trick to create these. What I do is I duplicate the layer, and I switch the layer blend mode to screen. This brightens the whole image, and what I normally do too is that I open up the color balance and adjust it in a way that the whole scene looks like it is just brighter and a bit more reddish and yellowish. So this now the whole scene looks like it was it had a longer exposure if you would think in photographical terms. So this is the original image, and if I now dial up the screen layer, it looks like we have more exposure in the camera. And now I'm creating a layer mask for this light layer, and I'm switching the layer mask to black so that now you can't see the layer at all. What I can do now is I take my brush, make it white color, and now I paint inside the layer mask. So everything I paint inside the layer mask now with white means that it gets lighter, because what I'm essentially doing is I'm revealing the layer with the additional light, and this can be done now to every part of the image where I want more light to hit. And the cool thing about that is that I do not have to think about which color I would need there, which color would go there. All I have to think about is where will the scene be brighter? Where will the light hit? And since I'm only painting in the layer mask, the parts where I'm painting now just receive the right color to achieve the effect of getting lighter. So I'm looking, what I'm doing now is looking at the planes here, and here we have Wiggins the cat. He also has some planes looking towards the camera more. The camera, I say, the light source. And maybe I have some folds here. By the way, it would have been a very good decision to put more work into the folds that I'm trying to create here now, because folds are very complex, and good painted folds can look very nicely, and to invent folds is very hard, and I'm inventing them here now, and the result won't be quite perfect, and that's okay, because you always have to make decisions. You have to find a compromise between effort and result. But if I had made some studies about the folds on the bed sheet or something like that, it would have made for a much nicer result. But I'm okay with what happened here. So this is quite a nice trick, and you can also use a big soft brush. I'm just so that you know, I'm still working in the mask here. What I'm doing is I'm masking out the very bright layer we had added to the painting. So what I can also do is I can take a very big brush and and lighten bigger parts of the whole thing. And notice, I'm not painting with bright color here. I'm just demasking the layer. If I'm painting here in the shadows, I cannot make it very bright because I can only bring it to the level that is within this added layer. So, by using this technique, I was able to bring the whole thing to a point that comes very close to what I'm imagining. And there's another nice trick now that you can do. You can use the Smudge Tool. You may know the Smudge Tool. With it you can push pixels around. But if you have painted in a mask like I did, you have now the possibility to use the Smudge Tool to smoothen some of these edges, and it makes for a very nice effect. I'm just smudging inside the mask, and the play of soft and hard edges is very important in painting. And what you can do here is you can decide which edges are strong and sharp, and which edges are more soft. For example, here on the face, you can smudge up the edge a bit, and you get a rounder shading, which is better for the face in this part. But you can have the sharp edge here, where essentially the hair casts the cast shadow on the skin. Now, our painting is evolving quite nicely, and the only thing that the scene is lacking in my eyes now is I turn off the drawing. Yes, it looks quite nicely, but from a lighting standpoint, and from a standpoint of being able to read everything nicely, what I would wish to have is a second light source. And the second light source I will add with another little trick. What I'm going to do is I create a new layer, and I set this layer on screen. And inside this layer, now I put it away. Oops. Inside this layer I will now paint with a little bluish color. And the layer is set on screen, and that means that it's going to lighten up everything that's painted with it. And I'm painting now quite harshly. What I'm imagining is a blue light source that shines from the opposite direction of the warm light source on the left. So I want to have a cold light source from the right, and I'm on a separate layer with that. And what I'm going to do now is to be really harsh with it. I will open up the drawing so that I'm able to see the contours of the cat. And what this light source is doing basically is creating or defining the volume of the objects that are not illuminated by the main light source. So we really have to think about the volumes here. And the bed sheet obviously is a very big plane which will receive a lot of this light that comes from the right. I know what you want to say. It looks horrible, doesn't it? But just wait a bit. We also want to have some light here on the pillow and stuff like that. So I turn off the drawing and I see, yes, in direct comparison, this is a nice effect. Overall, it shows some volume on the other side, and the only problem is that it looks a bit crappy in this intensity. But that's the reason why I've painted it on a separate layer, because now I'm able to use the slider to adjust the intensity of the light source. And also, because it is on a separate layer, I'm able to take an eraser and erase all of the erase out all of the shading that I really don't like. So because I'm going to use a big soft eraser on that, I have to make a selection here in order to not erase the wrong parts. And now I'm erasing away the parts of the shading that I don't quite like. I like the little rim light on the cat, but I don't like the whole plane here illuminated so harshly or so strongly. And now it's what you notice now is that sometimes I have to zoom out very far in order to see if the overall effect is right. And I think that is okay. And one nice thing about having this all on a separate layer, I can turn it on and off like I want. One nice thing about that is that if I'm painting, for example, the spots on Wigginson's fur, the rim lighting sits on top of that and illuminates the back of the cat, even if I'm painting the marks, the spots in the fur on it, because the lighting layer lies above it. And that's what I mean when I say I try to manipulate the image into the final form. I could have painted, or I could have thought a lot of the whole image, and then I maybe I would be able to decide which color and which intensity every brushstroke would need in order to achieve the result. But that way, by using adjustments, by driving things into the direction that I want to see it, I can follow my gut feeling. I can have this feeling, oh, I need a shadow here, or I need it to be darker here a bit, I need to have it lighter a bit, and all this stuff. And it's a very flexible workflow, and normally brings me to the point where I want to arrive in the end. So the thing is, now I have more or less defined the scene. If you zoom out now, you will be you pretty much see what the panel will look like in the end. All it is lacking now is detail. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint all the detail that we need for the panel, and I will speed up the video quite a bit in order for you to be able to see that without having to sit here 2 hours. So I will, from this point on now, I will stop talking and I will speed up the video until it is the painting is finished, and then I will return with my voice to for the final touches. There are some tricks at the end to make the Wormworld Saga look the way it looks like, and well, we yeah. Don't know what to say now. I just paint away, and you can watch it in accelerated time, and then we hear back in a few minutes. Yeah, you know, or we hear back right now, because originally I planned to play some music here, so that you wouldn't have to watch the video without sound for several minutes. And I put a track of classic music into the background, uploaded everything to YouTube, and YouTube automatically identified the audio track I put into the video and disabled the video from my video library, with a notice that the video contains copyright material. Okay, so I thought, okay, you would have to live with the silent movie, or I could do a little experiment here and do a dubbing of the video, in which I'm now actually viewing the video and are able to record this audio track. That's the word I was looking for. And on the YouTube channel I had several people suggest that I that as a remedy for my problems that I'm not able to speak correctly when I'm painting or drawing characters, that I could redub, that I could simply redub the video, and that this would be much more enjoyable. Some of you pointed that out, and well, this while I'm trying this now, I see that it's not so easy to say something interesting when watching your own video. It's not so easy for me to see and to find out which things went to my head at the painting, at the time when I was painting it. I could comment it a bit here, but I think that everything is quite obvious. Most of the steps that we see here in accelerated time, I also did at real time before, and well, all I'm actually doing now is I'm creating all the detail that takes most of the time when you paint. And as you can see, painting the detail normally means to pick lighter and darker variations of the colors that are inside the painting already, and enhancing, and by that enhancing the shading, using small brushes in order to be able to paint the details. In fact, what I see right at the moment is that the face of Jonas in this panel looks horrible. I can now see that because I now had several days. I'm actually recording this audio track here only a few hours before it will get uploaded, and what I'm seeing here is my painting that I did several days ago. I would even say several weeks ago. I don't know. I think it's 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks. And what normally happens when you have a look at stuff that you painted a few days or a few weeks ago is that you see all the problems in it that you are not able to see right at the moment when you are when you were painting it originally. So I the thing I would like to do now, if there was any possibility, would be to shout at myself in the past and say, "Hey, Daniel of the past, uh, what a crap you painted there." And but I guess I wouldn't listen to me. The thing is that this is, of course, this is a problem that I also have in creating the graphic novel, and that basically is the reason why it happens very often that I change a panel a few weeks after it was originally painted. What I would do is, or what I generally do is, I accept the fact that I'm not able to create a perfect painting in one sitting and on one evening, and I just paint it. And my goal is to reach like 90% of the image that I want to have later, and I don't bother about the last 10% at that evening, because I know that I'm not able to see it. If you're painting for 2 hours or so, you're not able to see the little flaws and mistakes you made while you were painting. But a few days later or 2 weeks later, it will become very obvious to you. And my process normally is, like I said, to paint the painting, not to worry too much about all details, and then after 2 weeks or so, I would go over the panel again and fix a lot of the stuff. And often it's just playing around with the proportions. For example, taking the liquify tool and bringing the proportions. Oh! I see the original soundtrack comes again. Now there, I'm back, and I have nearly finished work on the painting. What I'm doing now is, now that I have defined most of the parts of the painting, and now that I exactly know which shape the different elements of the scene take, I'm creating some masking in order to do some adjustments that are necessary locally. And for the things that I need to do now, it's very handy to have areas masked out. Like in that example, I have created a mask for Jonas, because I want to work behind him. Because when you go out of the when you zoom out, you will see that his face doesn't really come out in front of the pillow, because they are closely the same value. And I have now masked him out. I'm storing these masks in the channels palette. You can do it by clicking this little icon here, and then you have the mask, and if you want to get the mask, just hold the control key and click into this thumbnail, and your mask will be loaded. So even if we have now deselected the mask, if I'm holding control and clicking into this thumbnail, the mask will be revived. And I'm now inverting the mask and also make it invisible. It's still active, but it's invisible. And what I'm going to do is I'm taking some dark values from behind Jonas and use it to paint parts of this pillow. By the way, a nice little trick I'm always using. Normally, if I have the whole screen space, and not only like now only a part of the screen space, I duplicate the panel. It's under Window, Arrange, New Window 4, and there you can create a new window and scale it to a very small size, and there you can see if the stuff you're doing zoomed in has the desired effect on the image when looking from further away. So what I'm trying to do here is to darken the pillow in order for Jonas's face to pop out in front of it better, so that we can read him better. Now there are some last finishing touches left, like putting some highlights into the eyes, which always brings out the character a little bit more, and also we can have some more contrast in the mouth area here. And basically I could work on this forever and refine, but like I said, it's not so much about making this very detailed. It's more about providing enough information so that you as a reader receive enough information in order to make heads and tails out of the scene, see what's going on, and that normally is enough. Here are some very rough areas that I can, especially in the face area, you shouldn't have too much roughness. Other areas can be much more. Most other areas work with much less detail, but characters are normally they require a bit more detail than other elements of a panel. That's the reason why panels with a lot of characters in them take much more time to paint. That's really interesting. I found that out when I was working on the first chapter. I found out that even a large-scale painting, if it is a landscape, I could do it in a very short time. But even if it is a small panel but has 2 or 3 characters in it, it takes me so much longer. So the panel that I'm painting for this demonstration here falls into the middle of that. We have one character and a cat that's mostly lying in the shades, and where I haven't put a lot of effort into it. And we have the interior scene, which, because of the geometric nature of most of the elements, is quite easy to create, to but the fastest scenes for me are nature scenes. They are just they are not only a special joy to paint, but they are also very fast to paint. I can do a lot of nature scenes in a very short amount of time, and that's very good because the Wormworld itself will show a lot of nature scenes, and I'm really looking forward to come to that point. In fact, the first 2 chapters of the Wormworld Saga contain a lot of stuff that I have never before painted, like the car in the first chapter. I never painted cars before, and that was really a challenge for me. But I also encountered that these kind of challenges are what makes the whole thing worthwhile. I was afraid of the challenge at first, but then I realized that it would be quite cool to see if it works, if I'm able to paint a car, if I'm able to paint a bedroom, and all that stuff. That's and you grow with every panel you paint, and that's really cool. But I'm also looking forward to painting all the fantasy stuff uh, that's going to be in the Wormworld Saga. That's the other side of the medal, I would say. But the most fantastic scenery looks best when it is contrasted to a very normal, everyday life scenery. So now with this panel, I'm at a point where I would stop fiddling around too much. There's always a little rough edge that I would like to touch up, like here. But generally, I would say I would call this panel here finished, and that means that now I would do some post-processing with it, turning the colors, working with the colors a bit to bring it to its final to its final rendition. I love to use the color balance feature for that. I will just turn off the little version here and use the full space. I love the color balance sliders to fine-tune the scene. I have a little too much blue here, and I could use a little warmer touch, I guess. And it would also be good to lose some of the greens that turned out in some parts of the image. But I'm not doing this in a logic way. In fact, I'm just playing around with the sliders, and I keep what I like. What I normally do too is I take my whole color layer, copy it, duplicate it, and put it on top of the image, of the panel, and turn it into overlay mode. Then I desaturate it, and normally I also colorize it a bit, for example with a blue tint. Now you can see the difference if I'm turning this off. We have this, this is the original version, and this is the version with the blue tinted overlay. And normally somewhere in the middle between these two versions, I find the version that I like best. It's essentially a value remapping of some sort. And I just encountered that I tend to become too light and too unfocused in my lighting when I'm working from my gut feeling, so to say. So I normally take this step to push the contrast of the scene a bit. And there are parts of the scene that are getting a bit too dark, maybe, but I say that is okay right now. And now I will tidy up everything a bit. I will name the layers appropriately. I normally I don't merge this blue overlay layer with the final art, because I have this crazy feeling that maybe for printing or other purposes I would need to be able to change this back. But now comes the very final step to define the final look of the panel, and that is I create a combination, a merged layer from the original color layer and the overlay. This is now a merged layer, and this layer I will run through a filter. And the funny thing is that I don't quite know where it is. I think it's here. Find edges, right? Now I will zoom in a bit. The find edges filter will find all edges that are between contrasting areas of color. And when I've created this layer, what I do is I go into hue and saturation and colorize this layer, normally with a brownish red. This layer is now multiplied over the final result, and its transparency is adjusted to about 40%. This layer gives the artwork its distinct look. I like how this layer creates some dark edges around contrasting areas, and by that I reintroduce some kind of line work and a lot of sharpness into the whole thing. It for me, this effect brings the whole artwork to life somehow, and that, although it's just a Photoshop filter, but if you compare the two versions, I really like the effect that comes from it. It works very nice with heavily textured parts, but I also like it, like the result we have in this panel here. So this is the final colored panel, and in the last step we will put a word balloon into it. See you then.